Humor can be quite subtle. What one person finds hilarious, another person may not find funny at all. Or if you're in a particular mood, you may find something quite funny, and when you're in another mood, you may find the same thing not so funny after all. John Cleese, the Monty Python guy, was talking about humor. And he said that when they were filming a scene for Fawlty Towers, Fawlty's in his car, and he's been having a lot of trouble with his car. And he's getting more and more aggravated. And finally the car just stops dead on him. So he gets out of the car and he's furious. And he gets out and he starts yelling at the car. There's nobody in the car. He's yelling at the car and says, "I've warned you time and time again. Time and time again I've warned you. And you won't listen. This time you're going to get." And then he goes off screen for about 5 seconds and comes back with a branch and starts thrashing the car with the branch. It was pretty funny. And so John says that when they first did that scene, they came back with a branch that was too big and it wasn't funny. And then they came back with a smaller branch and it was too small and it wasn't funny. But then they came back with a medium-sized branch and it was very funny. So humor can be very subtle. My apologies for foul language occasionally here and my 50 favorite jokes, 50 plus favorite jokes. But sometimes foul language is necessary. Makes it more funny. My apologies for a little bit of maybe racism or sexism. But usually the comedian is not putting down a minority group, but he's pointing out some funny aspect of a situation involving racism or sexism. In fact, it's usually the racist who is the butt of the joke, not the minority group. I attribute these jokes to the proper comedians as much as I can, although the first few bunch I don't remember, so those are the ones I'm going to start with, the ones I can't remember who said them. And I'm sure I'm going to tell them in a different way than the original comedians told them, because we all remember things according to the prism of our own memory, so I'm sure I've distorted some of the things the way I remember them. All right. A sad note in the news today. Dr. Backwards, who for years thrilled children and adults alike with his amazing ability to speak backwards, perished today in a 3-alarm fire as no one responded to his cries of "plah, plah, plah, plah." I don't know if they still have cobblers these days, but back in the days when there were cobblers and you brought your shoes in to get fixed, this guy brings in his shoes and he suddenly gets a promotion, so he has to move out to the West Coast right away. So he does that, he completely forgets about the shoes, and there he's in the West Coast for 10 years with a career there. And then as it happens, he's back on the East Coast visiting old friends. And he's in the same neighborhood, and he notices he's wearing the same jacket that he wore the same day he was leaving his shoes. And he reaches into the pocket and he pulls out the ticket. I said, "Whoa, I'm going to see if I still have my shoes here." So he brings it into the cobbler. The guy takes the ticket, looks at it, goes out back, comes back and says, "Be ready next Tuesday." The mob's lawyers insisted the man died of natural causes, because what could be more natural than to die with a bullet in your head? My grandmother was a fitness fanatic. She would run 5 miles every day. Every day she would run 5 miles. She's 97 years old now and nobody knows where the hell she is. On the old Laugh-In show, Ruth Buzzy, the spinster who usually sits on a park bench, says, "I'm not going to pay my taxes anymore. That way I'll have at least one man after me." The race problem in downtown Los Angeles was solved this afternoon, as the smog was so thick no one could tell what anyone's color was. Tony Curtis has just come off his role as the Boston Strangler, and so he's on Laugh-In, and Goldie Hawn comes walking by and he says to her, "Hi, Goldie," and Goldie ignores him. And he says, "Goldie, why are you ignoring me?" And she turns to him and says, "My mother told me never to talk to stranglers." The Naked Gun movie, the guys in prison are planning their escape, the prison break. So they're passing the word down. "Tonight, 10 o'clock, the break. Tonight, we're breaking out, 10 o'clock. The break, 10 o'clock tonight." The word comes back. Johnson wants in on the break. Johnson, he wants in on the break. Johnson wants in on the break. Johnson? But Johnson's a guard. I know, but he's very unhappy here. Dumb and Dumber movie, the two guys are driving cross country to return money to gangsters or something like that. And they've been driving for a while, so one of them says to the other one, "Boy, we've been going for a long time. I want to see how far we've come. Check the map." So the other guy looks at the map and, "Oh no. What?" "Well, according to the map, we've only gone 4 inches. Borat is a character who is the ultimate male chauvinist pig. So he's talking about his first wife, and he says, "My first wife, she was very good. She worked very hard in the fields for 3 years. But after 3 years, she became lazy when she turned 13. And he's showing his village to the cameraman. And he's very proud of his village. "And this is Jorge. He is the town rapist. This is my sister. She is the number 3 prostitute in all of Pakistan." I loved David Letterman's sense of humor. He says, reporter Stone Phillips interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer last night. Ooh, the guy was creepy. And that Dahmer guy was pretty creepy too. Interesting news, archaeologists have finally figured out Stonehenge. It turns out it was an ancient method for arranging big rocks. Dave said he had a tough week at work and he was really looking forward to coming home on Friday and getting a pizza and sitting down and watching Battle of the Monster Trucks. So he gets his pizza, he sits down, turns on the TV, and wouldn't you know it, it was preempted by idiotic wrestling. I love Norm Macdonald jokes. They can be kind of edgy, but they're funny. Yesterday at the O.J. Simpson trial, O.J. almost sabotaged his entire case when he blurted out, "Hey, that's my glove!" The O.J. Simpson jury has predictably divided themselves into 2 different factions. Those who think he's guilty and those who are really, really stupid. Barbara Jordan, one of the first black women in Congress, died this past week at the age of 59. Remarkably, singer James Brown had nothing to do with it. So I go into this place and I order Polish sausage. And the guy says to me, "Oh, you Polish?" And I said, No, I'm not Polish. Why do you think I'm Polish just because I ordered Polish sausage? I mean, if a guy came in here and ordered French toast, would you assume he's French? No. If somebody came in here and ordered Belgian waffles, would you assume he's Belgian? No. So why do you think I'm Polish just because I ordered Polish sausage? And the guy comes closer to me and says, "Sir, first of all, this is a hardware store." The Wisconsin legislature has finally passed a bill allowing blind people to have hunting licenses. This is after years of lobbying by deer. Here's a few religious jokes. I actually saw this years ago driving on the street. I saw a bumper sticker saying, big red letters, "Jesus loves you." When you get closer, you see underneath, "Everybody else thinks you're an asshole." Here's an alternative version of a biblical story. Jesus is preventing the townspeople from stoning a woman caught in adultery. He steps in front of them and says, "Let the person who is without sin cast the first stone." And an old woman steps up and just throws a huge rock. And Jesus turns to that woman and says, "For crying out loud, Ma, I wish you would stay home. I was trying to make a point." News are from the Vatican. The Mother Teresa, she is fast becoming a saint. She already been confirmed for 2 miracles, though one was a card trick. I used to work in a group home for special needs people, and one evening the NBA playoffs were going on, and everybody wanted to watch them and watch the Celtics, except one of the women. She had no use for basketball. She didn't like basketball. She was... And I said to her, oh, sorry, you're outvoted 7-1. So we're watching the basketball, and at one point Danny Ainge grabs a rebound and shoots out full speed. He goes around one guy, another guy, another guy, another guy, all the way through, all the way in for a layup on the other side. A full-length rush, length of the court. And it was fantastic. It was great. And I was wondering, well, that was great. And I was wondering, I wonder if she has any appreciation of what the Ainge just did. And so I turned around to look at her, and she's going. There was an episode of The Odd Couple. Felix and Oscar, they were arguing about who's in better shape. And they decided to have a contest, 5 different areas of competition. They were going to see who's in better shape. And one of the areas was basketball. Now, Felix didn't have a good concept of what one-on-one basketball is. So he's getting ready to shoot. And Oscar's going like this. And Felix said, what are you doing? I'm guarding you, I'm guarding you. Well, I think that's very rude. I'm trying to shoot. I played tennis with a guy who used to live in New York City, and he would play basketball at a gym near where he lived. And at this gym, occasionally, it was very good basketball there. In fact, some former NBA players would sometimes drop in and play. So it was high-quality basketball. So one day, in comes the Big O, Oscar Robertson, one of the greatest players ever to play the game. So he's in there for a workout, and they're playing ball, and there's a guy on my friend's team who's a gunner. He shoots all the time. He hardly ever passes. He's a real gunner. And so my friend tells him, hey, Oscar's getting kind of pissed. Pass him the ball once in a while. Pass the ball to somebody else once in a while. They come down the court. The guy doesn't pass the ball. He shoots. He shoots again. Oscar walks off the court, out the door, without a word. That's not how you play basketball. I'm not a comedian and I don't do impressions normally, but maybe you'd like this, I don't know. Charlie Bronson. Hey, I had to kill him. He was bothering me. Betty Davis. If you really love someone, let him go. Then, if he doesn't come back, go out, hunt him down, and shoot him. I was watching an old movie one day, and a actress was playing a sophisticated socialite. She was smoking a cigarette, and I recognized there's the same woman, the same actress who played the Virgin Mary. I thought that was pretty funny. Here's the Virgin Mary. What is the Virgin Mary doing smoking a butt? So I could just imagine her as the Virgin Mary in the grotto. All right, kids, by next month I want a chapel built right over there. Got it? Okay, good. Hey, see you next month. Here's a couple of impressions I really like.
Can't keep a good man down, can you, Bruce? Can you? You look at me when I'm talking to you, son.
Hi, Shaq. How are you?
I'm good.
I see you doing a lot of commercials these days.
You know, I played a long time in basketball. It's one of the most dominant things. I have a lot of fun doing the commercials. I actually Buick, y'all know all my commercials, but I've always been a Renaissance.
I taught tennis at the summer session of a prep school, where they have, regular classes and then activities in the afternoon, like tennis or karate. And I was in the locker room one day, and I heard somebody telling this story about a few locker rows down, and I don't know how true this is, but it was pretty funny. The first day of karate practice, karate session or whatever it's called, class, the instructor's telling the students about the different types of karate. And here's a black kid come out and stand in front of him and he knocks him down to show him this is karate from Japan. Now the black kid was not too pleased about this. When he gets up, the guy knocks him down again. And he says, this is karate from China. And he gets up again, he knocks him down a third time. And at this point, the kid has just about had enough. And he tells the instructor tells the guy, this is karate from Korea. And so the kid circles behind the instructor and goes like, boom! Hits him in the back of the head and knocks him out flat and tells the class, you tell that dude when he get up, that'd be the Hammer from Cincinnati. I used to work at a group home, as I mentioned, where we would keep notes on the residents. And one day I was reading through a report, a general long report. It's handwritten, but it's very professional. Richard shows such and such a tendency here. Richard has his activities of daily living are up to par. His hygiene is good. He shows this tendency and that tendency, whatever. It was very professional all the way through. And then it finishes with a single line. Richard is also nuts. That's cracked up. The report was so professional up until that last line. And then I looked again at it and I said, oh, it's not nuts. The word there is mute. Mute, not nuts. I was watching a football game with my sister, and I don't remember the game or the announcer or the quarterback. I'll say the quarterback was Smith. So the announcer says, Smith drops back, a quick piss out to the left. And my sister and I look at each other, did he just say what we think he just said? And so my sister and I have the same kind of sense of humor. We just started right as, you just don't have time for a quick piss. No, you don't. You just don't have time for a quick piss, no matter how quick you are. I mean, really. And so we spent the rest of the game cracking jokes. We had a great afternoon. It feels getting pretty muddy out there. Yeah, a lot of pissing going on. I usually make videos about religion. And one of the ones I made last year was about Jesus. And of course it's very serious, the whole thing very serious. So I thought at the end, I got to get some humor in here. So I said a joke at the end. Here, it's all jokes. But I want to make this little intermission here and say something sincerely serious. And you can figure out your own lesson from this. And if you have any insight in the human condition, you should be able to come to your own conclusions here. I was watching the evening news, and a little black kid had drowned at a pool in Boston. And the news reporters and the cameras were all there, and the police were milling around, and the ambulance was there. And the father was there. And he was, of course, devastated. He was bent over crying. And so I was watching the various policemen milling about, and I noticed one guy. It occurred to me, boy, if there's a guy who looks like a racist cop, it's probably this guy. But what did he do? He went over to the father, put his arm around him, and stood there crying with him. They were both there, both bent over, crying together. Both of them. Why did the chicken cross the street? It's because a black guy was walking behind him. And the chicken's going across the street feeling very guilty. Oh, am I being racist? Am I being racist? But I don't blame the chicken at all. I mean, after all, their murder rate is 100%. 3 guys are out hiking. A Jew, a Muslim, and a lawyer. And it's starting to get dark, and they're losing their way. They can't find their way back. So they come across a farmhouse, and they knock on the door, and they ask, we're out hiking here, and we're lost. Can we possibly stay here for the night? And the farmer says, sure, come on in. The only thing is that I don't have enough room for all three of you. Two of you are going to have to sleep here. One of you is going to have to sleep out in the barn. And the Jew says, no, he'll sleep out in the barn, no problem. So he goes out, they go to sleep. A few minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It's the Jew, and he says, I didn't realize there are pigs in that barn. The pig is a filthy animal. I can't sleep in there. He tells that to the farmer, and so the farmer wakes up the Muslim. Asks the Muslim if he'd be willing to, because the Jew doesn't want to. So he says, sure, okay. So he goes in there, and the Muslim's in the barn. A few minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It's the Muslim, and he's saying, I didn't realize that there are pigs in the barn. The pig is a filthy animal. I can't sleep in there. So he comes in, and the farmer decides, well, I'll ask the lawyer. Asks the lawyer, and the lawyer says, sure, I'll sleep in the barn. So he goes in. A few minutes later, there's a knock on the door. It's the pigs. They're saying, hey, we can't. I heard that Jerry Seinfeld's father's favorite joke was this. A guy falls out of a second-story window. He's lying on the pavement bleeding, and people rush up to him and say, what happened? And he turns up and says, I don't know. I just got here myself. That is funny. I like the way Jerry ruminates about to what extent can race horses understand what's going on in a horse race. I mean, are they going down the track, 100 miles an hour, and they make eye contact with the horse next to them and say, I don't know, but they want to get there really, really fast. And then when they get to the end of the track, they make eye contact and say, we were just here. One of the characters I liked on the Seinfeld episode, among the many good characters there, I mean, the main guy, the main people, and all the cameo people are all very good always. There's Kruger, the incompetent CEO. So he's holding a staff meeting. Everybody's sitting around the table, and he says, all right, people, let's listen up. I just got finished reading the monthly thing, and it looks like the company's quickly going into the red, black, whatever the bad one is.
Many people think I was born right here in this country because I have no accent.
I can show you how to pay zero taxes on $1 million. All right, get $1 million. Okay, now, when the tax man comes to your door and asks you why you haven't paid any taxes, you tell him, I forgot. I love the episode where Steve plays Socrates. He's in a room by himself, waiting for the trial to end, a trial for his life. And so finally the trial ends, and of course he is condemned to death. His friends come in, they're all glum, and they hand him the hemlock. He drinks the hemlock and says, okay, so we're out of here now, right? He says, well, no, Socrates, you drank the hemlock. So? Well, hemlock is poison. It is. We thought you knew. I don't know things specifically. I only know things in general. I came across a cartoon I saw in the New Yorker that I thought was pretty funny. And I always wonder, I mentioned how humor is subtle, so I don't know if this translates into the spoken word, because a lot of times, if not most of the time, the way something is drawn is what makes it funny. But anyway, here's this joke. An army general is standing there in the plaza, and there's a row of tanks behind him, 8 giant tanks. They're all ready to go, ready to fight or defend whatever's necessary. And the general is talking to a scientist who is pointing down to the ground at a row of ants. Pretty large ants, but ants nonetheless. And the general says to the scientists, you know, when you called us this morning and said the city was being attacked by giant ants, I wish you had been a little more specific. You meant giant in terms of ant standards, right?
Here's a few cartoons I find very funny.
The other day I was walking down the street and I look across and I see little Jimmy Wilson. I hadn't seen him for 25 years, not since the 3rd grade. So I went over to him and I started beating him up like I usually do. And he was screaming and hollering and yelling for help. And it occurred to me, wait a minute, if this is really Jimmy Wilson, he'd be my age now. I read that Nora Ephron was very funny. Had a good sense of humor. She was at a dinner party, which she didn't like dinner parties. And her friend asked her if she would host a similar party maybe next month. Of course, she didn't want to do it, so she says, "Oh, Gwendolyn, how could I possibly refuse you? And yet I have." I think Jeff Altman's very funny. He does this routine where he makes fun of his crabby father, who has a very distinct brand of trash talking. His father would start yelling at him, "Oh, you mess with me, buddy boy, I'll beat you like a rented mule. I can do it too. I can do it. I'll beat you like a rented mule. I'll flatten you like a new driveway. I'll drop you like a 3-foot putt. Don't mess with me. Oh, I'll roll you out like discount carpeting." Sometimes Altman does things that are kind of weird, but they don't make any sense to me, but they're funny. Like he'll go, "Please, I beseech you, grant me a tureen of muesliks." Two guys are playing golf, and one guy's lining up his putt, and he notices there's a funeral procession going by on the road next to the golf course. So he stops, takes his cap off, puts it over his heart, and waits until the procession goes by. And his buddy is very impressed. He says, "You know, John, I'm very impressed by your reverence and your respect that you've shown here." And John goes, "Well, that's the least I could do after 30 years of marriage." Monty Python. Young woman comes home with the boyfriend to meet the parents for the first time. She's very much in love with him. He, on the other hand, is a complete mess. He's coughing, he's wearing dirty clothes, and he's like, "Ay, ay, ay." But she's in love with him. And of course, the parents, as soon as they see him, they're pretty concerned. So the father, smoking his pipe, goes, "Mr. Johnson, what do you do for a living?" He says, "I clean public lavatories." "Oh, is there a chance for an advancement?" He says, "Oh yes, after 5 years they give me a brush." The guy goes into a bar with his dog, and he puts the dog on the counter, and the bartender says, hey, get that dog off the counter. No, you can't do that. And the guy tells me, no, you don't understand. This is a talking dog. He can talk. "Oh, really? Show me this is a talking dog, or I'm going to throw both of you right out through the window." And so the guy asked the dog, "What part of my mouth is this?" And the dog says, "Oof." "What's on top of the building?" And the dog says, "Roof." "Who's the greatest baseball player to ever play the game?" The dog says, "Roof." The bartender says, "All right, that's it." And he takes them and he throws them both right through the window. Dog shakes off the glass and says, "You think I should have said DiMaggio?" Two psychiatrists are meeting for lunch, and one of them seems very upset, seems beside himself. He's just so disturbed. And his friend says, "What's the matter, John? What's the matter? You seem very, very upset." And I made the most terrible Freudian slip. "Really?" "Yeah, it's just awful, just awful." "What was it?" Well, I was having dinner with my mother, and I meant to say, could you please pass the butter? And I accidentally said, you ruined my life, you fucking bitch.
Hope you enjoy these jokes. Check out my website if you're interested in religious issues or in how to use your Kindle with less frustration.